Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio today is Curt Homann, Executive Director of the DeWitt County Development Council. Good to see you, Curt. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Good to see you.
What a beautiful morning, by the way.
It is nice.
Oh my gosh.
For sure.
I know. If we could bottle this up and just recreate it every day, this would be ideal. What a great morning.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great way to start a Monday. All right. Let's talk, Curt. I caught up with you last at the DeWitt County board meeting a few weeks ago, and you presented to the board a request for money for a feasibility study for hotels in DeWitt County. What is the county wanting to do, and what is this study going to show us?
Yeah. So essentially, we did request a total of $30,000. That's $15,000 for two studies, one for Farmer City, one for Clinton. And first of all, that money came out of specifically out of economic development funds. They're set aside specifically for that purpose. But what those hotel studies will ultimately tell us is the viability of hotels in both of those locations.
Okay.
And that really is probably about step 3 or 4 of where we're at in these potential projects.
Okay.
For sure.
Out of how many steps?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Sure. When will this study get started? What will it show us? How long will it take? Give us kind of what you know about this study.
Yeah. So they'll be starting the study in days, and we should have it back early to mid-June. So it's a relatively quick study.
Oh, wow.
The primary focus on the study is is a hotel viable in those locations? B, if so, how many rooms would the market bear here? And then if it is viable, and then we determine number of rooms, then it actually does a pro forma, which is a financial breakdown of expected revenues, expenses, all of your cost to build, all of those items that would be necessary for investors to take to a lender.
Yeah, I was going to say, who would build these? I mean, obviously the county probably would not.
Oh,
so
no,
is
no.
there interest in
Sure,
this?
there is. Yes. Yeah. So ultimately, how this really started is a lot of observation. So it's very common for me to ask business owners what they need. And we've been very fortunate to have some large manufacturers locate in DeWitt County. And in one of those conversations, I asked, I said, what do you need? Most of the time I'm expecting him having problems with this product. Is there a local supplier? Those types of things is what I'm really asking for. But one in particular said, you need a hotel in Clinton. And, that prompted interest from me, some follow-up questions, and it does make sense. And ultimately, as an example, this particular employer had roughly 180 people in from all over the country about 2 weeks ago. They stayed in Bloomington. They did a lot of meetings in Bloomington. They fed them in Bloomington. They brought them over here in two chartered buses to tour the facility. While they were here, they did have some local food catered in, but for the most part, they spent their time in Bloomington. And this particular business owner suggested that we ought to have them spend their time in Clinton.
Yeah, right. Their time and money, and
sure. And he's correct.
Yeah.
So we look at the other manufacturer. They have people coming in all the time. From corporate, from other places, and I'll ask them, where do you stay? Well, we stay in Bloomington, and it's not it's really none of the local hotels really cater to that business traveler. And again, this isn't a knock, but a business traveler doesn't necessarily want to a volcano in their room, or those types of things, which I think is a great marketing piece.
It is
actually,
uh-huh,
but
sure.
it does not cater to the business traveler.
Sure. So you mentioned the the recent employers, the recent business
Yes.
development that has happened as a reason for these. But what about the rest of the year?
Yeah, that's a great point too. So first of all, this one particular employer is bringing in. They use distributors. They have training that's at this location. They're bringing in people every month.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, but there's an awful lot of events that take place too, and over the years, I've also noticed that some of these event invitations, so a lot of the lake
Mm-hmm.
events that take place, they're actually sending people to uh,
Decatur.
reserve rooms outside
Mm-hmm.
of DeWitt County. So, again, why we have to ask ourselves why. I can speculate on that, and it doesn't necessarily matter. But the fact is, they seem to be asking for an alternative hotel location
Sure.
inside of DeWitt County.
Sure. Curt Homann, Executive Director of the DeWitt County Development Council, is our guest in studio here for this morning, talking about the feasibility study for developing hotels. Is this specific to Clinton, or I thought Farmer City was
No,
in
Farmer City as well.
Okay,
Yes.
so talk to me a little bit about the viability of a hotel in Farmer City. Like, what would make that work?
So interestingly, as the discussions progressed, which initiated in Clinton, part two of this is not many, virtually all hotels are franchises. Okay, so you can call Marriott up as an example, and you could say, hey, will you build a hotel in DeWitt County? It's not on the radar, I promise you that. So if you don't have investors ready to go, they're not going to build a corporate owned hotel.
Okay.
So ultimately, the discussion really is with investors, and those, in the process of doing that, there was some interest for Farmer City as well.
Okay.
So interestingly, a fairly large investor has a significant interest in more so in Farmer City.
Really?
So there's a obviously the interstate traffic, the raceway, some of the events that they have going on there is also is a good expectation that a hotel will succeed there as well.
Sure. So, this drew a lot of, and I really don't like doing this. I'll just put this out there. I don't like responding to social media criticism, but I'll let you do that in the fact that folks say Clinton doesn't need a hotel. We have two hotels there. The perception is they're not well run. They're not in great shape. Why do we need more just to turn into that? People aren't going to stay in them. I know you've seen some of this. I'll allow you to respond to some of that.
So yeah, I guess first of all, I put a lot more faith into the business people and the investors that I'm talking to than someone on making a comment on social media as to why we do or don't need this.
A fair point.
The second half of that is that's why we need the study. So I have a very good idea that both studies are going to say there is a need, but the second half of that is how many rooms can we justify, and most importantly, there are a handful of investors that are ready for this project to take place. We will have to supplement. So let's take a look at this as an investor perspective. An investor has some commitment, but we're asking that investor, yes, would you be willing to invest in a hotel? And the answer is, yeah, I would be willing to, but they need to know all of the details. So we need to know the number of rooms. We need to know what the cost is. We need to know what their return on investment is going to be. And until we have that study, none of those things happen.
Now, are we talking like a Homewood Suites in Forsyth, or like what do we?
Yeah, so we're looking, and that will be determined based on the number of rooms. So
Okay.
so certain hotel brands, they look at number of rooms as the catalyst. If you're under a certain number, they don't want that chain, or they
Mhm.
don't want that location.
Sure.
So ultimately that is to be determined, but they will be national brands. I will say that.
Okay.
That's the
That's the expectation.
that's what they will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sure.
uh,
And I want to go to a talking point that we made in a few visits past, kind of talking 2026 and what's coming up this year. You had mentioned bringing a hotel to certain parts of Clinton or DeWitt County would likely prompt or be the catalyst for even more development around it, right?
yeah. So there's, DeWitt County has made tremendous strides the last few years,
Mhm.
but a hotel specifically automatically brings additional business.
Mhm.
So very likely a sit down restaurant would go right next to a hotel.
Right.
A gas station doesn't have to be right next to it, but needs to be pretty close.
Mhm.
So those are very, very common supplementary businesses that locate as well.
Mhm.
The size of projects they are, I mean, on the low end, I think if we get a fairly low number back of rooms, that's still probably a $9 million build.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing on the high end, we're probably looking at 15 million. That's each location.
Mhm.
My guess is Farmer City is going to come in a little bit lower. So we look
Mhm.
at 9 million there. We look at 15 million,
Mhm.
12 to 15 million on the Clinton side.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of revenue that's generated off of that
Mhm.
just in real estate tax revenue,
Sure.
let alone some of the others. So
Yeah.
I got off, specifically, people say, well, we don't need a hotel or those types of things. The information that I have says that we do,
Mhm.
and we're going to verify that with a hotel study.
I mean, not only does the information you have say we do, there's people interested in putting a hotel here that
Absolutely.
see this as a viable option for a hotel,
Correct.
which, yeah,
And we're seeing more and more of that, not just with hotels, but with other projects too.
like housing.
Like housing,
Mhm.
like other businesses.
Mhm.
DeWitt County has put itself on the radar the last several years. And the other comment, for those that are leery or apprehensive, more often than not, the comments that I have gotten, and not so much recently, but that I've gotten are, they sure wish Clinton, they sure wish Farmer City, they sure wish DeWitt County would take a more proactive approach.
Mhm.
And that's what we've done.
Mhm.
We're looking for business. We're actively pursuing business. We need the study,
Mhm.
and that study moves these projects forward.
Mhm.
Without that study, these projects never happen.
Mhm.
So it's an important step, and there is a noticeable difference in the communities over the last 2, 3, 4 years
Mhm.
as compared to a decade ago.
I would like to wrap this up with I thought it was a fair question at the county board meeting we were both at a few weeks ago. You got a question from the board about did you approach Clinton or Farmer City for this study? And from the answer you gave, I gather it was just DeWitt County you approached, but that doesn't necessarily mean Farmer City and Clinton won't have a stake in this. How about that side
They
of it?
for sure they'll have a huge stake.
Yeah, right,
in this,
exactly.
to be
Yeah,
honest with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Uh, the county board, there's economic development funds set aside for the project.
Mhm.
This is really where we're asking them to participate in these hotels. Not to say there wouldn't be something down the road, but this is where we're asking them to participate, and it's a pretty small number in comparison to what the cities will need to contribute to these projects. Now, before that gets too taken out of context, most incentives are incentives. They're rebated some incentives that they've created, that the businesses have created.
Mhm.
So again, the $15 million hotel build probably generates 400 to $500,000 a year in property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
There's also hotel motel taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's also secondary benefits, employees, secondary businesses, they would be responsible for an awful lot of revenue for the cities and the county.
Sure.
So the incentives come from, they would get a portion of that back for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the numbers are big. So there's areas that I can point to that don't give incentives for anything because they're in high growth areas
Mm-hmm.
that never give incentives. And in this case, they're giving $1.5 million, $2 million, but they are doing that only out of what that hotel will bring to that community.
Sure.
So right now it's a farm field, which is generating virtually zero
Mm-hmm.
Revenues.
Mm-hmm.
And it will turn into $1 million plus a year of revenues, and they're going to get back $300,000 for 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a fair question to direct to you, but I always am a little, just personally, I am a little bit concerned about like always developing on farm ground and the elimination of that farm ground. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that, or I mean, what do you think about that?
I do. It really, the area that I'm talking to is no longer farm ground. I mean, it's been developed outside of that, in particular. But when we look at farm ground, there are certain areas that are specific and look like they would be good, for development.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't, if a farmer wants to continue to farm, they should continue to farm. They shouldn't sell their ground.
Right.
I'm more of the belief that give the farmer the option, and
it's their land.
It's their land. Let them make that choice. But in the bigger picture of it all, do we want to eliminate all of our farm ground? No, we'd be in a world of hurt,
right,
in that situation.
Right.
So,
sure. Yeah. It's a balancing act. It certainly
is.
Yeah. Very good. Well, on that note, did we miss anything in that conversation you want to put out there for us?
Well, there's a whole lot of things that can come up, so we can. I don't know that we missed anything super important, but if you have other questions, we can certainly.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, let's regroup in the break and come back with some more with Curt Homann, Executive Director of the DeWitt County Development Council. My guest on the in the studio this morning. We'll wrap up with Curt coming up on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW. Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW. WHOW.
Once again, a good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Again, my guest in studio, Curt Homann, Executive Director of the DeWitt County Development Council. Big day today for you, Curt. I know applications for your latest round of grant funding is due today.
Due today, Monday, May 4th. You can drop them off at the Farm Bureau office. You can email them to DCDC. If you haven't even started, you do have time, but you need to get started on it right away. I'll accept those anytime up through midnight tonight. Not in person, of course, but the Farm Bureau office has a drop slot in the building. Seal the envelope, write DCDC grant on the front, and make sure it's there before I get in at approximately 8 to 9 tomorrow morning.
All right.
So you've still got some time to put that together, but after that time, we won't accept them. We'll have you look at a future date for those.
Very good. And may the 4th be with those applying for the
for all you Star Wars fans.
I am not a Star Wars fan, but I wanted to drop that in there. I thought it would be a good one. How much funding is available this round, Curt?
Looks like we're going to have $17,500 that we will distribute to likely multiple winners, but not. That's been the tradition, but doesn't have to be that way.
All right, sure.
Yes.
All right. Very good. So another round of grant funding, and applications are due today. Will there be more opportunities for grant funding in 2026?
Well, we don't know that for sure. Our expectation, we're at mid-year. Our expectation is that we probably will be a little earlier next year.
Okay.
In the grant cycle.
All
so
right. Very good. Well, on that note, Curt, I unfortunately have to let you go for the day. Best way for folks to learn about this round of grant funding, or just learn DCDC in general, where do they go?
Always good to follow us on Facebook. Certainly reach out to me at any time, by phone, text, or whatever, 217-935-5271. I'm glad to sit down and meet with anybody. And also our website, dcdc-illinois.net.
Very good. Curt, always good to see you. Good conversation as always. Thank you so much. Yeah, Curt Homann, Executive Director of the DeWitt County Development Council, my guest in studio this morning. The morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Network news comes your way next on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.